Good. So welcome everybody to the second session today on sustainable finance. It's my great pleasure to be chairing it. And I want to thank the organizers, the Global Compact Network, Georgia, and the Global Compact in general for putting together a panel, which is not only very distinguished, but also very well balanced. It has everybody who matters on sustainable finance on the panel, which you will find out yourself when I will introduce the panel members in a moment. So yes, sustainable finance, it's of course a very hot topic. The ESG sector has grown a lot just in the past year. The number of investable assets that are now linked to in some form to environmental, social, and governance ESG issues has almost doubled in the past 4 years. The European Union has adopted last year a regulation to establish a framework to facilitate sustainable investment. This regulation, often referred to as the EU Taxonomy Regulation, is the cornerstone of the EU Sustainable Finance Act, and it will feed into several forthcoming regulatory initiatives, such as the EU Green Bond Standard, the EU Eco-Label for retail investment, and others. Japan, China, Netherlands, and France have also regulation in place to address sustainable finance taxonomies and definitions. There is a nice OECD report called Developing Sustainable Finance Definitions and Taxonomies, which tracks these developments. As we will hear, Georgia is also very active in this area. So lots going on. And at the same time, a PwC survey conducted this year with more than 5,000 CEOs globally has found that 60% of CEOs have not yet factored climate risks into their strategic risk management activities. So this is really a big question of how we get from measuring and reporting on ESG, which is of course also very crucial, to actual changes in financial decision-making and getting companies to embody good management practices. So we will touch upon these issues. And as I said before, we have the regulatory side, who's very crucial in this area with us, in the form of Kuba Gwenatadze, who is the governor of the National Bank of Georgia. He has held this position since 2016. And I can attest from direct personal experience that he's leading a real powerhouse of a team. The OECD has developed ESG principles for Georgia, which have become mandatory from this year onwards for commercial banks in close consultation with the National Bank of Georgia. And he has a real talented team. So we'll be looking forward to hearing from him shortly. Then from the banking side, we have Alex Matua, who's the General Director of ProCredit Bank. And ProCredit Bank is one of those banks that are actually embracing actions from the National Bank of Georgia because they've been very active in sustainable finance and ESG from early on. We have somebody who works both with the financial sector side and the corporate side in Carolyn Bright from the International Finance Corporation. And I'm not underestimating when I say that she really does shine a bright light on the ESG sector. She's a real visionary and will bring to us today a comprehensive view on what ESG all entails. We have Santander Bank Polska with us today in Juan de Porras Aguirre, who's the Vice President of Santander Bank Polska. So again, bringing in the perspective from a bank that does everything from retail to corporate investment, private banking, insurance, asset management, and also obviously brings in this European bank perspective. Santander is the 4th largest European bank. And then last but not least, we have Roman Sinzenko, who is heading up a Greencubator, and he's a real leader in sustainable entrepreneurship. So we'll be hearing from him more on what it actually means for small businesses and how they can tap into the sustainable finance agenda. So without further ado, I want to give the floor to Kuba. And yeah, just to say, as Bakur has already mentioned, There are functions on chat and Q&A where you can ask your questions. We'll be asking 2 rounds of questions to the panelists, and then we'll have about 10 minutes left at the end to open the floor. If you already know who you want to address your question to from the panelists, feel free to put that in the chat and Q&A box. That will make my life a little bit easier. So yes, over to Koba. Koba, the National Bank of Georgia has been remarkably active to advance Georgia's sustainable finance agenda. Could you tell us a little bit about the role that central banks can play to advance sustainable finance and the actions that the National Bank of Georgia has undertaken to date and the actions it plans for this year?
Thank you, Isabella, and I want to welcome everybody on the panel and participants on this very interesting topic. Sustainable issues like environmental and social ones are among the main challenges that countries are facing all over the world. And if we start from the point where we got interested, in fact, it all happened in 2017 when I was invited in China on a conference it was about financial sustainability issues generally. It wasn't just only sustainable finances. And then one of the panels was about sustainable finance. And, you know, there were very interesting presentations from the Chinese regulator and business representatives, and there was IFC representatives as well. And it was really, really very remarkable. I mean, how much has been done in this direction. I mean, do you know that, I mean, Chinese numbers are, especially for Georgia, very, very large. So I was really impressed. So I got really interested. And when I came back, we started to look around about these possibilities. And then, you know, IFC also was in touch with us about this issue. So this chemistry happened. So if we talk about, I mean, why also it was sort of a trigger for me, right? But I mean, if you look on a big picture, I think that it's really important for a regulator who is forward-looking, because central banks have an important role to play in responding sustainability challenges, you know, especially in developing markets, because usually in developing markets are more focused on short-term financial performance rather than long-term value creation. And a successful transformation towards sustainable finance is necessary, and it requires a number of coherent, consistent actions to be taken. And it is from both sides, from public side, from regulator, from private sector as well. So we are very committed to promote the agenda on the role of the financial sector to support this financial sustainable development of the country generally. So we joined IFC supported Sustainable Banking Network in 2017, and then since then we made quite you know, significant progress since then. So the key milestone, actually, what I want to mention is that we developed sustainable finance framework, and we launched it. So this roadmap was developed with IFC Sustainable Banking Network, and so it combines all possible steps which we plan, or I mean, which National Bank of Georgia regulator planned to support sustainable finance over the next 2 to 3 years. And the ultimate goal, of course, is to provide a credible and predictable regulatory environment for business to know how to operate in this situation. And so most of the actions you see on the roadmap on this slide, which is presented here. So I mean, in order to, what we saw most importantly was that we need to somehow encompass this ESG framework somewhere. And so what we did is that we integrated ESG consideration in the corporate governance code for commercial banks. So now, starting from 2021, and I mean, to be more precise, in May 2021, this ESG disclosure is mandatory for banks. ESG considerations must be part of the bank strategy, and ESG risk should be incorporated in banks' risk management system. And so it is already mandatory, and the banks are working on this. So another important direction for sustainable finance framework is a development of taxonomy, sustainable finance taxonomy. So for the audience, actually, this taxonomy is a list of definition and classification systems that defines which actions or projects can be considered as green, social, sustainable. And it is very important for successful implementation of other components of the roadmap, as you see, because some of them are already done, some of them are in the process, some of them are unplanned. Because it will enable us to ensure comparable and consistent disclosure by financial institutions. And we have asked the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia and Ministry of the Environmental Protection and Agriculture to define technical criteria for this taxonomy. I mean, we could have taken we could have done copy-paste exercise, but we did not want to do that because there are some specifics for Georgian financial system, and this is why we approached it more seriously, this issue. So, and for the future plans, just few words. So for future plans, we have ESG risk management guidelines, and this will be necessary to enhance a framework for issuing green, social, and for enhance ESG risk practices among financial institutions and sustainable finance guidelines. And it will be necessary to provide the framework for issuing green, social, and sustainable bonds. So this is, in a nutshell, why we got interested, why we think it's really important. And I just want to add that, in fact, sustainable finance, I must say, is not, how to say it, it's not in a way option now. I think that it is really, necessary, and time brought it is that way that it's not choice anymore. I think it's necessary, and I think that regulators, private sector should get engaged because it will come anyway. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. So yes, I think very well shown that NBG is very active, and we're looking forward to actually seeing the ESG principles being implemented this year, and getting actions from the banks on the ground. And normally I would say we need this action from the regulatory side. Otherwise, we do not see change happening as fast as we need to. However, ProCredit Bank, for example, has been a front runner in green finance from early on. So Alex, can you explain to us why ProCredit Bank has been so proactive in the sustainable finance area, and some of the challenges that you have encountered on the way?
Thank you, Isabella. Thank you, organizers, for giving the chance to talk about the green finance, environmental issues, etc. So it's a great pleasure to be here. Actually, ProCredit Bank is a member of ProCredit Group, and we are operating in Eastern European countries, and our base headquarters is in Frankfurt. So we have a kind of group approach towards the green investment, environmentally friendly investment, and actually the points which we introduced in Georgia, it started a long time ago, actually. So in Georgia, we are operating since 1999, but the green topic itself and environmental management we introduced in 2008, actually. And the challenge at that time was the most difficult one was the awareness starting from employees and ending up with customers. Actually, this was the key challenge which we faced. But since then, we understand that the first key point is to have a kind of standards, policies, and the basement kind of framework in order to push on. So what we did actually in the beginning, so created all possible standards at that time inside the bank. So, and it was very important that we put on the first place as employees. So saying introducing the trainings for employees, introducing this a lot of seminars on international level. And then we started to looking at reports. So the report is important for every company actually. And when we say reports, we looked at how we consume paper, how we consume electricity, all types of consumption, and then looked at the waste management, etc. So which brought a significant part of the success internally. So we increased responsibility of employees, and then we started talking about how to spread it outside of the bank. So last 10, 12 years, so we introduced a lot of projects inside, which is a kind of examples for our customers, for our SME customers, that gives incentive from one side and also takes the responsibility on it. So we had this project of paperless projects. So we decreased 95% of paper consumption in the first 3 years, and then we started implementing electric cars. So we ended up in 2020 without gasoline car. So we introduced the project of rainwater usage inside the head office. So for technical waters, we invested in solar panels on our roof, which produce 10-12% of total electricity consumption, and a lot of projects inside the bank, which showed examples to our customers. And then we talked about last 5-6 years, what type of products and services we can supply to our customers, so especially for SME customers. So today, actually, we reached so there are the green loan definition inside. So now, as you know, the National Bank works on the definitions that to create the standards in market in order to compare to each other. That would be, it is a really great step, I would say. And internally we had a definition of green loan, which is the European standard. And now in 2020 we reached almost 20% of our total loan portfolio in green. So when we talk about the green finance, actually it doesn't mean only renewables. Actually, yes, there is energy efficiency loans, they are renewable, so the small HPPs, but most of them are right now in energy efficiency loans. Why? Because you know that in Georgia, the electricity price was quite low, and since January this increased, and now we see a lot of demand which coming from solar panel investments actually, and the payback period for solar panels is decreased from 15 years up to 7 years right now. So after increases of prices, so there is quite a big willingness to serve clients. So what are the important for SME here? So what I would say is from one part, it's important to have legal framework, regulations. Usually businesses doesn't like regulations or new strict measures in general, but this is the point when the green and environmental responsibility, it should be kind of minimum requirement for everybody. So it cannot be that only one part, financial institution or one single SME client or private individual. So everybody has to take responsibility on it. For that reason, I think we need to have minimum requirements, and I'm happy that the National Bank and the government already started introducing minimum requirements on it, which is very important. And on the other side, it is also very important to have incentives on it. So the good thing is for us and for financial institutions or local banks, it's that we have great support from IFIs. Though I have to mention that European Investment Bank, European Investment Fund, EBRD, KfW, there are other institutions, financial, especially Europeans, which provide good facilities for it. So there is an incentive for guarantee funds, there are incentives for interest rates for SME clients, and a lot of support, technical supports on top. So because of that, I think we started it a little bit earlier. We managed to reach 20% of green portfolio, but it's not an end. And we think that there is great opportunities now in Georgia, and I think in future that to reach 30-35% in coming 5 years actually. So these are the key elements of success. I think the awareness, training of the staff, and providing good services for green investment in Georgia. So this is the key points, I think, for every bank. And environment itself, legal aspects, regulation, I consider it as a supportive part, not as a kind of forcing stuff.
Great, thank you, Alex, very clear. So now let's move over to Caroline. She has 20 years of experience working with firms and financial institutions in emerging markets, and corporate governance and ESG are her special areas. She's a specialist in these areas. Koba has already mentioned that ESG is not optional anymore. So I suggest we take a step back now, and Caroline, you can tell us, why is it important to take appropriate account of environmental, social, and governance considerations when making investment decisions in the financial sector, but also on the corporate side?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Isabella. And it's a pleasure to be here and on this distinguished panel. As you note, I represent the International Finance Corporation. We're part of the World Bank Group. We invest in the private sector, and we also provide advice in the private sector. And I'd like to just emphasize that we do all of our work through a long-term sustainable development lens. So all of the investment work, all of our advisory work has that sustainable focus to it. And we call this environmental, social, and governance, ESG, which is the term we use and has been mentioned on this panel and earlier panels. And it's an important concept because it really is at the center of everything that we do. We have a program here in this region supported by the Swiss government. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank them for helping us on this journey, because it really is a journey. You mentioned earlier, and the governor mentioned, this is a journey from that we're all on. It's not optional anymore. And let me give you some examples. Why is this important? You know, 10, 20 years ago, people talked about CSR, they talked about good citizenship. Now it's really about specific environmental, social, and governance risk management. And it's good risk management for the business as well as for the planet. I'll give you two examples. Very recently, 5 or so years ago, we had Volkswagen, the diesel emission scandal. You remember that? They lost $32 billion due to that scandal. And that's pure ES and G risks, right? Another more recent example is Rio Tinto. They blew up these really important caves in Australia just last year, as well as the fines. Both the CEO and the chairman of the board and many other people are out. So this is an issue that we can no longer ignore. As the governor said, this is essential. I'd like to point out, though, that sustainable finance requires two things. It requires the financial institutions, like ProCredit Bank, who integrate ESG, not just into how they do business, but how they make their investment and lending decisions, who they give their sustainable finance products to, right? So it's integrated into the business decision-making, like IFC does. But it also requires a supply of firms who meet those requirements, who also manage ESG risks and opportunities. So it's important for the entire business community. For banks, you know, it's good risk management. which impacts on the financial bottom line. Its brand value, its reputation, its access to international financing from the international finance institutions like IFC. ESG risk management is essential for underwriting all green, sustainable finance products. If you don't manage the ESG risks, then the products you are offering risk being seen as greenwashing. And of course, regulation. It's coming. It's not coming only in Georgia and the EU, it's coming everywhere. It really is, as the governor said, no longer optional. But let me finish this introductory comment on how do you do this, right? How does a bank, how does a company integrate ESG? It's a confusing field, lots of regulation out there, lots of requirements. So it is about providing clear guidance and using tools. And we at IFC, we have very well established environmental, social, and governance standards. These include the performance standards on environmental and social issues and our corporate governance methodology, which looks at and includes oversight over sustainability. These are the tools that companies and banks can use to really integrate ESG into their business operations. Thank you. Back to you, Isabella.
Great. Yeah, this is very good to hear some actual examples on how this can go wrong. Let's move over to Juan from Santander. I thought it would be interesting to hear from you how you evaluate the EU's efforts to integrate sustainability considerations into its financial policy framework and the consequences that this has and will have for Santander operations and investment decisions.
Thank you, Isabella. I want to thank the organizers for inviting us, inviting Santander to this panel. It's an absolutely hot topic. I've been in, I would say, 4 panels pre-pandemic. We've even had arranged our own ESG conference last year on March 2020 in Warsaw, and unfortunately couldn't take place. This has not prevented us from continuing our efforts in this field. Rather the opposite. The pandemic has come to put this even at the forefront of all our policies. And going directly to answer your questions, I think that the EU fighting climate strategy change is aims at a very ambitious targets, right? There's no net emissions of greenhouse by 2050. It's economic growth decoupled completely from resources. And more importantly, in the case of Poland, I would say that the third element, that no person or no place is left behind, is particularly important for some countries like the one I live in Poland. This targets of clean and circular economy, this objectives of the restored biodiversity, put obviously the EU effort, the EU change Green Deal at the very front of the strategy of all financial actors, right? So hardly anyone can question this approach. To me, the question is whether to meet those objectives, to what extent the financial sector is crucial. And just let me give you some figures. We have identified in Europe there's be a gap in to reach those targets, a gap of around 180 financial gap of around 180 billion euros yearly to cover those gaps. And given that 2/3 of the financial investment in Europe comes from banks, obviously banks are going to play a substantial role. Of course, the EU regulation and the EU efforts are assessed in a very positive way. Yet still, I think a lot need to be done to from a national and a local community perspective, especially to ensure something that Alex already mentioned about the clarity and the stability of the both the regulatory and I would say even the political environment. This should not fighting political climate should not be a debate should not be part of the political debate. And the second part of your question, integrating this sustainability into our activities, is not definitely already a future action. It has been happening for quite a long time, and the sustainable and responsible approach to finance has redefined every single part of our business for quite some years, from product design to something that Mr. Chairman of the National Georgian Bank mentioned, the risk assessment procedures, which is basically embedding, if you put that in the risk strategy and risk management strategy, the ESG principles, definitely that irradiates to the rest of the organization. And that is because, it's not only an effort that, as I said, that it's been demanded by regulators, or it's just simply because, clients demanded, communities in which we are present demanded, more importantly, shareholders going forward, or even today, have expressed very clearly the commitment that they need to see a clear commitment of their companies they have stakes into ESG policies. And if I look at my annual report of the Group Santander just a few years ago, Caroline was mentioning the CSR. We just had a few lines at the end of the annual report a few years ago, right? And now we have, of the 800 pages, I would say there's around 100 that refer, or 150, I would say, even, that refer to in direct or indirect way to the ESG policies. And the very first pages, there's a executive summary in the third or second page around the ESG policies going forward. So it is crucial, and it has changed our lives in the last years very, very significantly. So back to you, Isabella. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And without further ado, let's move to Roman from Greencubator, who works at the receiving end of the financial sector. He works with entrepreneurs. So Roman, could you tell us from more the practical side how you think access to finance can be improved for enterprises like the ones you work with? You can also mention maybe some of the solutions you've seen on how entrepreneurs can overcome the value of death in terms of funding and also scalability.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Isabella. I'm excited to be here among such a distinguished panel of bankers and financing experts. And yes, I would say we are not just on the receiving side, we are kind of bridging side, and we are responsible for connecting the entrepreneurs and helping them build the pathways to growth. So Greencubator is ecosystem organization. So actually it's our job helping grow green GDP of Ukraine. And there is no better way of growing GDP, especially green GDP, is invented than entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs are the growth drivers. That's for us very important component. And what I should say here, we are serving the connection between some of the international finance organizations and most talented entrepreneurs currently in Ukraine and soon in some other countries. So on April 22nd, we are announcing the second phase of the Climate Innovation Vouchers, the program we are running for European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which rather innovative and which serves entrepreneurs well. And we are happy to help people from largest electrical mobility companies to, for example, green titanium, from technical hemp construction materials to HVAC solutions and many others. So we are offering small grants up to 50K per company, but these grants are actually the bridge over the valley of death for the companies which are commercializing the technology, which already received the understanding how their product work, they have the product market fit, and they are moving to the next chapter. So we are there to help them with the R&D costs with the funds from European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and European Union. And actually our job is a scout. We are scouting for the most talented, for the most passionate, for the most focused entrepreneurs that are creating green GDP, creating green jobs, and contributing to solving world's toughest sustainability problems. And over this course, we saw a lot of demand for really innovative solutions. So from our side, being surrounded even in Zoom, but such a bright minds in the banking and finance industry, I can communicate several trends we see from our work. So we see a lot of interest for the new technologies helping entrepreneurs overcome the second wall of death, because, well, the first wall of death is normally before you are getting enough funds from your paying customers, but the second wall of death is scaling up the businesses. And let's be honest, bankers are very often conservative. So what we see here, we actually see a very interesting trend that a number of the ventures we've supported are now diving into rather innovative cases of new types of financing and new types of investment. And there is a market of people ready to jump into this new model. Just a brief example for you. We supported the company which is called Delfast. This is Guinness record-winning electric bikes maker. So this is the Ukrainian company with Kazakhstan heart, because the founder, Danilo Tonkopi, is actually a Kazakh national, but he's developing business here. So this company got a lot of technology funded by the program we are running, by the Climate Innovation Vouchers. And recently they raised $3.4 million over crowd investing platform for launching their new production facility. Okay, but that's not just one case. We see a lot of other cases of this new form of financing. What's so special here? This is crowd investing. This is really interesting and new niche that was in demand. And once we were speaking with this entrepreneur, Danilo, the CEO of the company, said to me, we actually never expected Ukrainians to be the majority of our investors. 99% of them are not Americans and European and the European Union citizens like we accept, but they're Ukrainians. They liked our history, they liked our story. And this trend for democratizing investments, for the company that are going to the next chapter, is growing here in Ukraine, and it's also growing in the clean tech market, because we see that there is a lot of people who are not professional investors, but willing to support the sustainability story and invest not their last money, but their monthly check, half a monthly check into the company that is transforming some industries. And we have this trend going, like we have a spin-off of Green Incubator, the organization which is called Solar Town. This is the first municipal energy co-op. And this energy co-op has around 100 of investors, let's call them, that built together 200 kilowatt solar station in the city of Slavutich, the city which is serving now Chernobyl nuclear power plant. And we have the same democratization trend in electrical mobility industry. The day before yesterday, I got interviewed by Forbes Ukraine about one of our alums, the company called Go2You, which is democratizing the electrical charging infrastructure and allowing not just huge players, but smaller players build the charging infrastructure on their platform. And we see this trend in many industries. We see the trend for democratizing investments. And that's probably the opportunity where banks can step in with their product, with their ideas, and offer the platforms how this democratizing investment should work further, because, well, you have the keys. But currently, a lot of SMEs are looking for these alternative pathways, how they can raise the capital. And the second important opportunity, I believe, here to help them cross the death valley is actually implementing a lot of new credit scoring and bankability assessment mechanisms that would help bankers better connect and better serve the entrepreneurs that are creating the solutions for sustainable future and that are creating green products. So because currently in our market, we are the client of ProCredit, by the way, thank you. Currently in our market, we see that there is still a huge underserved part of entrepreneurs that are bankable, but the products are still very conservative, and there is no match between the bank's strategies and between the bank strategies and the needs of these entrepreneurs. So our next chapter is actually a really exciting task. We work as a scout, as I mentioned, and our next chapter is starting the preparation phase for some of the best companies we found during the previous phase, getting them ready for maybe follow-up investment by some of our major international partners like EBRD. And what I could say, well, we are scaling this program to Belarus. Early summer, we're also coming for the feasibility study to Georgia. And I do hope that the checks of 50,000 euros would be able to move forward the creators of green GDP and also grow them into the clients ready for the most ambitious banking products in the future, crossing this green wall, crossing this wall of death together and making steps into greener future. Over to you, Isabella.
Thank you very much, Roman, and also thank you for mentioning the important and growing part of the public and crowdfunding areas. And I think this is a huge topic on how we can ensure that people who are not venture capitalists or have a lot of experience can understand what they're actually investing in. And this I think puts into focus the issue of transparency, which ESG is also obviously tackling. But let's get back to what the National Bank of Georgia has been doing. Koba, I have one question from me, but then there are also some questions trickling in from the chat. So if you don't mind, I'll ask two questions to you now. One is on, you've mentioned that the National Bank has undertaken all these actions. So what are some of the challenges now going forward in ensuring action on the ground, and what are some of the solutions and actions you have seen as a result of the central bank activities on green finance? If you could elaborate that, and then I will ask a question from the audience to you right away about sufficiency. So, will the current approaches and trends be sufficient to align the financial sector with broader public policy goals and sustainable development? If you could briefly mention answers to both of these questions.
Okay, now you can hear me, right? Okay, so on the first question, I think that the main challenge, the way we saw it, and in fact, Alex from ProCredit Bank also mentioned this, is somewhat still a limited awareness. And it's not unique to Georgia, but at the same time, you know that it's a common challenge all around the world. And we have been doing everything to increase awareness. Together with IFC, for example, we organized 2 conferences in 2018 and 19, and we invited, with the help and assistance of IFC again, it was a high-level conference. We invited the representatives from region, from our neighboring countries to talk about these issues. And I think it was also supposed to take place in 2020 as well, but because of COVID, it did not. And I very much hope that it will take place in 2021. And so, this sharing experience does help to increase awareness, and I think it's very important. I remember that once when I was doing annual National Bank of Georgia's annual report presentation to the parliamentarians, one of the parliamentarians asked me, what are you talking about? You are the governor of the National Bank of Georgia. You are talking about some sustainability, issues, not just financial sustainability, but other sustainability issues. Why? So, of course, then I responded to this, but it also showed that, it's something so far seen as a very, very remote for central bankers, but in fact, it's not. So, to address this, we established a sustainable finance working group and it involves heads of relevant units and financial institutions, and we are working with this group on a constant, regularly. And at the same time, as an important task of this framework, to assess the impact of our policies and measures, we started developing ESG scorecards. This is also in cooperation with DFC, and this is to have a rating system to develop a sound base for assessment of the implementation of good corporate governance, environment, and social principles in financial institutions. Okay, and there was also a question about, I also saw that the question was sent to me, right, about what is the benefit to end users, right? Yeah, yes. Okay. Yeah, I think this is a very good question, because I mean it has been asked many times to me as well. I mean, why is it good for end users? I mean, there are several considerations for this. One is that I mean there are a lot of funds for this, and you know, if projects are compliant with this, it means that the cost of funding will be lower, and for final end users, the interest rate can be lower. So this is sort of like direct sign of this. But I mean, what is even more important is that it does reduce also price for end users, because as the project will be in line with green and sustainable requirements, then the risk of anything going bad in that direction will be less, and it will be also taken into account by financial organization, and it will be reflected in interest rate as well. So I think that these are also like two ways which reinforce each other, and which makes it even more valid and more encourageable, I would say, for final users, as well as for organizations who extend the loan and to receive the funding for other institutions to implement this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And if you could just touch briefly on the sufficiency question, our current approaches and trends.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, that was a question. No, I don't think that that's sufficient. No, I mean, it is really a lot of things to be done, and you know, I mean, when we used to have forums, central bank governors, there was a time we would meet. It's not, and you know, when I was talking to my colleagues. I will not name the country, so they have been telling me, my colleagues, I mean, why are you doing this? Come on, I mean, there are so many things to do. You know, you have high dollarization in Georgia, and this and that, and now we are talking about the things. And no, my response that no, that's not right. It is coming. It is already there. I mean, we will feel it more and more and more. That is why it's better to be engaged than to be involved. Does it take like one unit in the central bank to do that? I know one department. Do it, because it will come, and the system is going to benefit from this. So whatever is being done is not sufficient. So much more needs to be done.
Great, yeah, it's very clear. And maybe, Caroline, you can tell us a little bit about successful awareness raising and capacity building on sustainable practices, given that Koba has already mentioned that that's like a key area to ensure that sustainable finance practices are actually being implemented.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to reiterate that it's a journey, right, that we are all on. And I think the point is about sufficiency. We're not there yet anywhere globally. It's only right now that we're having discussions about creating globally sustainable finance reporting standards, just as we were 100 years ago about standard financial reporting standards. So we are in this journey, and we're on it together. But we need to progress. And how do we progress? Well, we've heard about the roadmap that the National Bank of Georgia has implemented, and that is part of this journey, part of this progression. And in IFC, we're trying to help that journey. And we have similar programs to what we're doing in this region in many countries globally. And what we're trying to do is provide those tools to help our markets on their sustainability journey. We have tools that we use as an investor that we want to share with others. And it's important to say it's not a black and white, good, bad journey. It's about integrating ESG for all companies. So let me tell you a little bit about specifically what we're doing in the region. So I mentioned earlier that the Swiss government, SECO, is funding our program, which we are using to help build local capacity for this sustainability journey. So one of the key things we're doing is working with local partners like CEDA to help them build their capacity on environmental, social, and governance. We're sharing our tools, our experience, our materials, training them on how to use and deliver these for local companies and financial institutions. You've already heard how we are working with the National Bank of Georgia to support on this sustainable finance roadmap, and specifically on ESG, risk management and disclosure. And I have to say, we're very proud of the National Bank of Georgia, as they are really a leader in this region. And we're very grateful for them, because we want to use their example, the example of Georgia, to encourage other countries in the region to also follow this journey. We also work directly with clients, both financial institutions as well as firms, on the sustainability journey, and also with our local partners. So we're offering our tools and our methodologies to help companies make the change. So we can offer, for example, ESG diagnostics, looking at what a company is doing now, and then provide support on how to improve those practices so that they can tap into the sustainable finance flows that are coming. This includes governance of sustainability, as well as environmental and social risk management systems to help a company and a financial institution integrate those into their operations. And of course, crucially, disclosure in order to benefit from the sustainable finance flows, but also in response to the regulatory and the shareholder demands that many others have talked about on this panel. And just to give one example, we have a disclosure and transparency toolkit that helps companies and banks disclose. It helps guides them through the challenge of what to disclose, how to disclose. And we're now localizing that and turning it into a platform, an interactive platform that companies can use to help them improve disclosure. We'll be providing training to our local partners and also awareness raising with local companies on how they can benefit from this in order to improve their practices. So I think, to answer the question again, just to be clear, it's a journey. Sustainability is the future, and we're all in this together. And our aim is to provide the tools to help companies in that sustainability journey so they can be resilient over the long time. I hope that helps answer the question, Isabella. Back to you.
Yes, absolutely, very clear. Yes, let's move over to the banking side and broaden it a bit. These are questions to Alex, Juan, and Roman. Like, what would you like to see from the banking sector? Like, how does the banking sector need to change to capitalize on the increasing role of sustainability and to accelerate financial flows into cleaner and green projects? If I can ask you to be very brief and to just say your top actions, and then I will be so frank to address questions from the audience to Alex already on, first of all, to what extent you see Georgia as a leader, or to what extent Georgia is perceived as a leader on ESG already, to what extent Georgia's actions are being perceived as green. I think there was one more question to you on, let me just go through. Yeah, again, on the, like, what are the advantages of these green loans that you offer compared to what other banks have to offer? So question to Alex, we can go a little bit over time, I've been told. So, but yeah, if you can still be brief.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Actually, the first question to answer where Georgia stands. Actually, we have opportunities that since we are the banking group, we have opportunity to compare our country and the banks between Eastern European countries. And also, we also look our neighboring countries. And it is clear that, yes, if you compare us in the group, so the group is, Georgia is, I would not say in the top, but a little bit behind the top, but not on the lower side, I would say, as a standing point. And I would say that it is changed last 5 years a lot. So since we are doing this business since 2008, we know that what challenges we had 2009, 10, 11, nobody would understand when we talked about the green finance and environment, how to perform. And we were rejecting cases because of they were producing something which was damaging environment, etc. So this part improved a lot, and I feel really comfortable in last 2-3 years. Then it's easier to talk. So we go to the point of awareness. So awareness is important, and awareness starts from inside. It doesn't start only with trainings or just 1 or 2 forums. It, of course, it helps, but that everybody should take responsibility inside the company, whether it's SME, it's a large company, financial institutions, it should be started inside. So this is very important, I would say. And I think we will be leaders in our neighboring countries, because the trend we have right now, so the support from parliament, legal environment, now regulations also, and national banks approach. So there will be quite a significant, not only 1 or 2 parties are participating in these changes in environment, but also all stakeholders inside. So that's why I have a feeling that, yes, there was a mention from international financial institutions that, yes, this is important to use Georgia as an example. So I really do hope that it will be soon. So the second question is, what are the benefits and what kind of advantages this green finance has? Yes, there are advantages when it goes to the interest rate, when it goes to the collateral, when it goes to the technical assistance, then when it goes to the giving some kind of trainings to SME clients, etc. But I think it should not be only the motivation. It should be kind of, since we say that everybody is responsible, private individuals we are responsible at our home to switch off sometimes light, whether it makes sense on our bills or not. This is the responsibility which starts from inner. So that's why I would say, yes, there are of course motivation, incentives, benefits, but we also we have to also contribute from our side. So that's why I would say these 2 aspects should be put in one place together.
Great. And maybe Roman, next, top 5 actions from you. And if you could be within a minute, that would be great. And then we move over to Juan right away. I think you're muted. Yeah. You're muted again. Okay.
Finally, I do believe that there is a really important lever in the banking industry's hands, and that could help shift the perspective and change the situation in the sustainable finance. And I see there is a potential of when there is connection between policy, and the policies are pushing for several transitions in the services and several important approaches. So I would say there are first component for banking products transforming the field is that the banks need to utilize data on energy performance and climate performance on ESGs when making the scoring decisions. And secondly, the policymakers should help the banks, should help the regulators, should help national banks create the new products that would be more affordable, more attractive for the sustainable lenders. And we have a number of industries here where they would have upper hand and they would push towards the implementation of higher environmental and climate standards. First, this is real estate, then agri sector, and then heavy industries. So luckily, there is transition happening in this segment globally, and I do hope that in our countries we will have more ambitious policymakers that would help utilize the regulatory approaches and offer cheaper loans to the sustainable construction companies, to sustainable agri companies, and other players. And of course, the banks would need the combination of data and data from really different sources to assess the impact of the projects and to assess how they would help revitalize real estate, revitalize production facilities to make them greener, less polluting, and integrate into sustainable supply chains. And also there is another important component where the overlap of public regulation and some banking products. This is procurement, both for banks clients and for public procurement, where green component could be the great driver of channeling finance into significance into some sectors that can offer green products that can benefit from cheaper loans. That's
great. Thank you very much, Roman. Yes. Thanks a lot for being very clear, very concise. Juan.
I'll do it in a minute. Lead by example has been said quite a few times. If you go to our headquarters in Madrid, you will find in practice the target plan for to be in at 2030 constitution compliant with the Paris Agreement. Everything is in paper. Everything is segregated in terms of the garbage. All the people is embedded in the organization. Employees do feel this environment. All cars of managers are eco. There's bicycles around. So apart from the risk management that I mentioned before, that obviously flows from in out, also out in is super important. The bank obviously makes that into its relationship with customers. We have sourced only since 2019 almost 34 billion in renewable projects, out of which 77% is wind and another, and then the rest is obviously solar and other. We do believe, and we have environmental checks of our clients or our suppliers and in our procurement policies. I think that's the critical thing that every institution, not only banks, have to change if they want to accelerate the success of the ESG policies. Almost a minute.
Yes, perfect. Thanks a lot, and thanks everybody. I would like to thank this fantastic panel for their really insightful contributions, and also to the audience for your time. We have heard from many different perspectives, and I'd just like to wrap up by saying that climate change is a collective action problem, which means that it cannot be solved by self-interest. We cannot leave it to the market alone. So we need regulatory action. And at the same time, we do need the private sector and the financial sector to move along. So we have heard today from all sides involved that need to move together on how this can be done. So thanks a lot, and over to the organizers.